In the Labyrinth of the Undead, Calamity Crusher Sir Shagaru Edith Lugrid leads his team of priests and priestesses against a peerless necromancer called the Corpse God. Shagaru fights the Corpse God alone as his team watches and helps cast spells. The necromancer is able to fight off Shagaru's attacks and calls upon the souls of the deceased from outside the labyrinth and from lands around them. He turns these souls into fuel for him and brings forth a dragon to attack Shagaru. Shagaru slices through the dragon with one strike. Corpse God then calls upon the bones of the dead to form an army of skeletons. Here, we see a young Shagaru as he recalls how his village was burned and the villagers were killed. The villagers' souls, alongside the souls of those he has slaughtered over the years, blame and taunt him. We find out that Shagaru possesses the evil eye, which helps him see all the souls the Corpse God has slaughtered. Shagaru first lunges and dismembers the skeletons, then dislodges a piece of the earth, which crashes into the skeletons. Then he lunges with his sword at the Corpse God, revealing a brain attached by chains to the Corpse God. This is his true form. Corpse God mentions how Shagaru also enjoys screams of agony by his victim, and that they are very similar as they play the Grim Reaper, to which Shagaru disagrees repulsively. Corpse God weaves a spell unknown to Shagaru, and he lunges forward to stop it. He charges forward and crushes the Corpse God, his sword piercing through the spell. We see a teenager reliving this moment, unsure if his spell worked. He opens his eyes to see the sky above him and unfamiliarity strikes. He notices that his hands are small and frail. He walks into the alley with a slit of his throat to reveal a city. He quickly realizes that everything is unfamiliar to him, from the language to the people. Then, a drone moves closer to him, revealing a man on the other end. The man on the other end, Takumi Kiruya, calls someone to inform them that the target is still alive despite the gash on his throat. The teen boy continues to move around in the unknown city, looking around and concluding that this land is peaceful when he comes across children laughing. Two policemen stop to talk to him in a foreign language, and he extracts the language of this land with the help of the body's brain, concluding that they're speaking Japanese. Here, we find out that the boy's name is Polka Shinoyama. One of the policemen inquires about the slit on his throat. Right then, a girl crashes into the other policeman's head and mentions how she's glad Polka is okay, leading him away from the policeman. A black-haired man and a blonde-haired man inquire from far away, mentioning how something is always up in Shinjuku. The girl leads Polka into an abandoned alley as Polka tries to remember who he is, only causing him pain. The girl shakes Polka to make sure he's okay before professing how she's going to kill him again. At that moment, Polka remembers the identity of this girl as the killer called Misaki Sakimiya. He runs away, the girl following right behind him. Through the drone, Takumi on the other end wonders why a 16-year-old is a target. He mentions how Polka needs to stay dead for him to get paid. Polka goes into an abandoned building. He mentions how he cannot sense the magic in this land, and without magic he cannot heal any of his wounds. As Polka catches his breath, the girl enters through the window right above Polka. He dodges her attacks and runs away, being fueled by the children of this land. The girl throws a knife at his calf. Polka takes the knife out and chucks it at the girl's face, but misses by just a little, scraping some of his hair. He runs and finds the nearest room. The girl explains that this building is famed in her line of work. Polka tries to run but falls due to the girl injuring his thigh. She alleges that this building was an execution ground and there are ghosts around. At the mentions of ghosts, it is revealed that the possessor of Polka's body has the evil eye. He sees the souls of the dead around him. Polka calls upon the souls once more as the girl dashes forward. Polka's possessor is revealed as the Corpse God as he turns these souls into a giant skeletal hand, impaling the girl. The guy on the other end of the drone gasps. We go into the other realm as Corpse God's brain and the skeletal figure lie. Shagaru is uncertain about the Corpse God's death, mentioning that his spell worked. The spell worked as teleportation, as when Shagaru tried to look for the Corpse God's soul, it vanished. It is mentioned that Corpse God vanished from their world according to the observation unit. Corpse God thanks Misaki for bringing him into a peaceful land and for bringing him to a place with so much magic around them. Corpse God begins to tell the story of his life. He mentions how those who possess the evil eye cannot live a peaceful life. As a child, his parents sold him to the court sorcerer where he fought as the necromancer until he defeated the empire, but the only thing he wanted in life was peace and desired to live quietly. We see the Corpse God sitting behind a boulder listening to the laughter of children around, playing with them and making them food. He then falls for the girl standing next to him. Then, soldiers are ordered to kill the village and save the children, where they kill the girl the necromancer loved. He holds her as guards surround them. He starts his revenge that lasted a century, killing and tormenting soldiers. He resides in a labyrinth with the corpse of all the soldiers he murdered. As time goes on, His longing for peace increases and waits to meet his end where he can cast the reincarnation spell. His spell succeeded and he reincarnated into Polka. The corpse god states how he can't die but he doesn't know what is happening. He panics at how easily Misaki was killed through just a stab through the gut as he shakes her with the skeletal hand. The corpse god then thinks that he can't live a peaceful life if he's on the run from the city watch as he cannot prove he did in self-defense. Meanwhile, Takumi watches all of this on his drone. He thinks he has lost his mind as he cannot believe what's going on. A woman named Clarissa contacts him and she wonders why it is taking so long. He sends over the video of a skeleton to Clarissa wondering if it is him or Shinjuku that has gone mad. The scene changes and we see Misaki as a young girl with her parents. But one day, a crazy man kills her parents in front of her. After witnessing their deaths, Misaki becomes an assassin that goes by the alias Zaki the Killer. She shoots a man in the wrist. He mentions how Clarissa wouldn't let her get away with this and she answers back saying that Clarissa is the one who hired her in the first place. The man recognizes her as the young Gyros whose parents he killed. He asks her if this is about revenge or if she thinks she's a hero for only killing killers. She replies saying that watching him made her wonder if killing is that fun and says how killing killers is fun. She also mentions that she never checked if she can kill good people and asks the man if he's a good person. Before he can answer, she kills him. Later, Clarissa asks if she would be able to Polka Shinoyama who isn't a killer. Misaki answers saying that she has fulfilled her goal so she doesn't mind and wants to find out to what extent she can go to. After killing Polka, Misaki doesn't feel bad saying that she can kill good people the same as the bad ones. She then thinks that someone like her should die as she won't make anyone happy, not even herself. She says how the only thing she hasn't tried is killing herself. She jumps off the roof but before she could fall her phone rings. She stops herself from falling. She answers the calls where she finds out from Takumi that the boy she killed is still alive. The flashback ends and Misaki wakes up to the corpse god looming over her. He is glad that the magic worked. Misaki wonders how she's still alive after being impaled. The corpse god answers saying that she's being reborn through magic. Right then Clarissa appears and hugs Misaki. She wonders how Misaki is cold and has no pulse, declaring that she's 100% dead. The corpse god mentions how she's a zombie according to this world's terminology, surprising Misaki. The scene takes us back 40 minutes where we see Takumi looking at the scene through his drone. We see Clarissa and her men enter the building as Takumi breaks the fourth wall and introduces himself. He mentions he is an info broker and helps the assassins hide dead bodies. He has lived a discreet life and wants to keep it that way but now wonders how he got in this mess. The corpse god is surrounded by Clarissa and her men as he casts spells on Misaki. Clarissa asks him what is going on before she introduces herself, to which the corpse god tells her to wait before he fixes Misaki. He uses the spirits to heal Misaki. Clarissa asks Takumi if he's adding the special effects and Takumi denies. The corpse god mentions how Misaki will wake up soon and asks who they are. Clarissa says that they are Misaki's friends and their job was to seek revenge and kill Polka. She asks if Misaki is still alive. The corpse god answers saying how her brain and soul remain intact and how he healed her wounds and she needs a sorcerer to cast a resurrection spell. Everyone is confused. The corpse god asks if anyone practices magic. Clarissa mentions that he's the first one she's seen. The corpse god mentions that they all had a mass hallucination and how they should let themselves be fooled before he casts a spell. Clarissa's men draw guns, but the corpse god is quick to attack one. Clarissa asks the corpse god for time to think. Right then, everyone hears police sirens as a fire erupts outside. Clarissa says how she's scared for the children, to which the corpse god asks to be taken there right away. Clarissa asks why he cares, to which he says that he's been burned a lot and children should not have to go through that. Clarissa asks Takumi to show the corpse god the way. Takumi shows him the building and the corpse god uses magic to get there. On arrival, the corpse god uses his evil eye to spot the children and uses a skeletal hand to push himself to the building. He's too fast and the people around don't notice. When he's in the room, he asks the spirits of the parents to help their children. He transports their spirits into the skeleton. The skeleton hand safely puts the kids on the ground outside the building. In the end, the corpse god makes it out of the building, but Takumi notices that the photos ended up on social media and wonders what the corpse god's intentions are. Misaki wakes up and the team makes sure she's okay by shaking her. The corpse god wonders how even in such a nation, kids are harmed. The corpse god wonders how he can get peace and Clarissa suggests that a lot of money would help him achieve a peaceful life. She asks him what his goal is, and to that the corpse god replies that since he's the only necromancer, he would like to use his magic to earn and then live his life peacefully as he once intended, as well as a place to belong. Clarissa introduces herself as Lisa Kuraki and mentions how she's an intermediary, and that will be his bridge to the city. Finally, she offers Misaki and Takumi's help to adjust in the city. Episode 3 starts with Misaki watching the video that went viral. Takami and Misaki help the corpse god move in while he guides skeletons to move his things. Takami asks Misaki if it makes her uncomfortable to hang around corpse god since he was the one who killed her, to which she replies that she found it exhilarating as she had never experienced it before. Takami asks if the corpse god would mind helping in moving boxes. He says that he doesn't know much about the world, and that scares Takami as he remembers how strong the corpse god is. Takami then brings up what corpse god has done about the relatives of Polka, the boy the corpse god currently resides in. Corpse god has sent them postcards, suggested by Clarissa, and told them that Polka has gone to rediscover himself. Here, corpse god also mentions how language is easier to pull out of Polka's memory than any other events due to the repetition, and that the only event that he can remember from Polka's past is the time Misaki killed Polka. Further on, Takami expresses how he is still not fully understanding the other world concept, to which the corpse god says that the animal known as the whale is known as the legendary beast in his world. He also explains to Takami how he used to be a skeletal monster called the corpse god. This information impresses Misaki. Corpse god now requires information about who wanted to kill Polka. It is then told that Clarissa knows who it is, but the corpse god doesn't want to ask her. Clarissa has also stopped taking any requests to kill Polka. Takami informs corpse god that Clarissa isn't the only intermediary for assassins, but he shouldn't worry because no one will kill a freak like him except someone named Lemmings. We then see Misaki playing with the skeletal arm, and Takami asks corpse god if he's sure he's comfortable with being around Misaki since she did kill him. To this corpse god replies that he doesn't mind as it was not him that she killed. Besides, Polka asks him to forgive her. Takami is surprised and asks if he's talked to Polka's ghost, and the corpse god replies that he's just moved Polka's soul into the drone that Takami previously controlled. He asks if he can use the drone temporarily to keep Polka's soul before he finds another object to move it to. Here, the corpse god also mentions how human lives are like toys to him. This makes Takami uncomfortable. Corpse god decides that he's going to need money and, therefore, will search for a job. Right then, Takami notices someone at the door and conveys that they're probably there for Misaki. Outside, a man in a gray suit begs Misaki to assassinate someone, but she is hesitant as she says she has another job. Just then, the corpse god descends down from the window and accepts the job. The man at first gets upset at the interruption, but Misaki says that if the corpse god is on board, she will accept the man's request. When they get to the scene, the man informs them that the assassins that they're there to kill are borderline psychopathic because they kill the victim's whole family. Just then, Misaki has a flashback to her childhood and her parents getting brutally murdered and dashes closer to the building. She is soon surrounded by many men that she easily fights off, calling them wimps. Just then, a hole can be seen in her stomach, and the man who hired her has shot her through the stomach. He turns to the corpse god and tells him to finish the job, to which the corpse god realizes what was going on. Corpse god then tells the man that Misaki is a zombie and therefore cannot die. The man questions what Misaki is, and in his earpiece, Takami asks how the corpse god knew that the man was lying, to which the corpse god says that he saw the ghosts of the children that the man has killed and accepted their request, not his. The corpse god starts his magic and a large skeletal hand rises from the ground and forms a ball on the earth, trapping all the men inside. The crying souls of the children look for their parents, and the corpse god apologizes to them and says that he won't demand payment for it. Misaki is surprised to find no bullet wounds on her body. Takami asks corpse god why he listened to the children if all lives are toys to him. The corpse god answers that he likes toys as they make children happy. Takami realizes that he's been wrong about the corpse god all along, and that it is he and Misaki who are morally questionable. The scene cuts to Clarissa in the bathtub, answering the phone and rejecting any hits put on Polka. Soon, two men are shown entering an abandoned building. They seem to be looking for someone as they turn to a door. One man goes inside into the dark room, and when he turns around, the other man is gone. We find out that the other man is Lemmings. A hand then comes out of the dark and grabs the man. The scene cuts to the corpse god and Misaki reading a comic about vampires. Misaki asks if vampires are real, to which the corpse god replies that with enough mana, he can turn her into one. Watching from his screen, Takami sighs at the pairing. The scene changes again. The scene is now a bar where the blonde man sits, waiting for Clarissa to start her shift. While a waitress is walking by, he reaches over and touches her inappropriately, soon to get his head crushed by a man with blue hair and a dark blue mask. The bartender explains that they have a hands-off policy. Now we are back to Corpse God, Takami and Misaki enjoying a pizza when Takami asks what Misaki being a zombie means, to which Corpse God replies that she cannot get injured and she should start eating raw meat to heal faster. She then goes over to the Corpse God and bites him. The Corpse God falls over. The scene changes again to the outer area, and we see two policemen investigating the scene where a bandaged man stands over the ball that the Corpse God made before. Although, the man disappears as soon as the policemen shine their light. We then see a dark-haired man slamming her head into someone and drawing blood. Back at the bar, the blonde-haired man gets a phone call, which annoys him. At the center, Takami asks the Corpse God questions about his world. Misaki mentions how she will use her teeth to kill now. Corpse God also mentions that he made sure not to kill any one of those men who shot Misaki. He mentions that he made sure that they would never kill again. At the crime scene, we see the blonde and the dark-haired man putting on gloves and talking about their department. Here we find out that the blonde man is Tsubakoi Iwano, who is the head of the materials compiling group under the Shinjuku Precinct Community Safety Division, and the dark-haired man is from the same group and is called Kuzaburo Ares. Tsubaki, the blonde police officer, explains to the Special Unit Force Comp 3 members about the different troublemakers, the Gator Sisters, the Barber, the Riddle, the Grocer, etc. All of these troublemakers are either in prison right now or dead. He also explains how these cases cannot be made public due to their unbelievable nature. This is the job that this unit does. He then mentions the three troublemakers that are free right now: the Grim Reaper, the fire-breathing bug, and Lemmings. He concludes that it must have been the fire-breathing bug that was responsible for the fire at the Shakuzawa building, as another police member explains how it was Lemmings' footprints that were found. Tsubaki thinks about the supernatural element in each of these crimes but surmises that they are all human and, therefore, the Comp 3 will catch them. The scene changes to Corpse God as he is transferring the soul of Polka from Takumi's drone into a stuffed shark toy. Takumi is glad to have his drone back. Corpse God explains to Polka's spirit that he is just borrowing his identity and apologizes for doing so. Misaki enters the room and hugs the shark toy, exclaiming how cute it is, unknowingly hugging Polka. Takumi comments that the real Polka might be weird because he gets excited about Misaki, the girl who killed him. Corpse God explains that he can allow Polka to talk, but he would require a new set of human vocal cords. Additionally, it would take up too much mana. He also mentions that he should focus on replenishing his magic first before they think about their monetary situation. Corpse God goes through the different ways he can replenish his magic, a few of them being performing exorcism on ghosts, or buying mana stones, regular gemstones in this world. Takumi comments about how gemstones are expensive. The scene changes again, and Corpse God and Misaki go to a jewelry store but quickly leave after seeing the high prices. They run into Ares, but he walks past them to catch Takumi's drone and asks him why he is trying to run away. The scene changes, and we see Tsubaki meeting Clarissa. He mentions that he wants to talk to her and asks about her involvement in the Shakuzawa fire and the Tangled Humans. The scene changes again, and Ares apologizes to Corpse God and Misaki for scaring them and ignoring him. When he tries to get Takumi to talk, the Corpse God interjects and says that the drone belongs to his friends. Ares tries to tell him that he should not be friends with someone like Takumi, but Corpse God tells him that he gets to choose who he stays friends with. Ares demands that the Corpse God tell him about himself. The scene changes into a flashback where Takumi explains his past experience with Detective Ares, Ares having wiped out the gang Takumi first worked for. Takumi advises Corpse God not to answer his questions and hide his power. Ares asks Corpse God if his parents taught him about not being friends with strangers, and Corpse God says that his parents sold him so he wouldn't know, which causes Polka to remind Corpse God that he's borrowing his body, and hence shouldn't say things as such. Takumi calls Ares and tells him that Corpse God and Misaki are just some gaming buddies, and that if Ares continues to harass them, he will release this video of him hassling innocent kids. Ares warns the Corpse God about Takumi, saying that if it comes to it, he will sell his friends out like last time when Takumi was part of the last gang. Corpse God responds by saying that Takumi is still better than Ares right now. Before anything more could be said, Misaki hides behind Ares and kicks him in the abdomen, sending him back. Misaki explains that she was just defending herself from a creep who was going to attack her, and then the Corpse God and Misaki ran away. The two get away by being carried into the air with a giant corpse's hand. Takumi calls him and tells him that Ares was right and that if it were between his life and a friend's secret, he would choose to live, to which the corpse god replies that he doesn't have any secrets that are worth his friend's life. Back at the police station, Ares asks another police officer to look at the footprint on his abdomen. She pulls out a photograph of a shoe print from the Tangled People's crime scene, and it's the same shoe. We find more about Lemmings by two investigators talking about how he's a dangerous man who is willing to do anything. One talks about his altercation with Lemmings, exclaiming that he was killed without being phased, without anyone knowing. Lemmings is inside the room looking at the photo of Misaki's footprint. The scene changes, and Tsubaki is drinking at Yudaokoru, and he drunkenly asks Clarissa to confess to working with the Grim Reaper. A girl comments on how cute the name Lemmings is, to which Tsubaki answers, saying there is nothing cute about Lemmings. Clarissa considers warning Corpse God not to show up, but Misaki arrives at the bar with Corpse God. At the same time, Ares texts Tsukabe, and he notices that the people who are involved in the Tangled Men case share similar traits to Corpse God and Misaki, and he decides to start talking to them. Takumi watches as Ares heads out of the police station, and due to an altercation with his coffee, he completely misses Lemmings and the camera. The scene changes, and Ares arrives at the bar where Misaki incriminates him as the guy who tried to hit her, which Ares denies. The lights at the bar suddenly go out, and Corpse God notices something on the ceiling. And when Clarissa lights a candle, they find Lemmings hanging from the chandelier. Lemmings drops down and lands on the table. The episode begins with Lemmings on the scene, and instantly Clarios's fighters take out their weapons ready to fight, which Clarissa advises them not to, as Lemmings would have killed someone if that was his intention. Ares tells Tsubaki the same thing, as trying to guess Lemmings' intentions are useless, therefore they should focus on catching Lemmings. Tsubaki reminds Ares that they have witnesses as Ares is preparing to attack. Misaki tells the Corpse God that Lemmings are more dangerous than the police, and Corpse God mentions how he can tell that due to the ghosts of people he has killed. They seem to be filled with hate and fear. Lemmings pushes two men towards the wall, when Ares attacks him with a broken bottle into his core. The bottle soon breaks, and Ares attacks with a baton, which Lemmings catches mid-swing. Lemmings turns around and goes to Misaki. He picks her up and walks away. Here Corpse God wonders that if his powers are found by the police, he can bid goodbye to his dream of a peaceful life. Regardless, he decides to attack Lemmings anyway, saying that he will never have peace until he opposes Lemmings. Lemmings and Ares continue to fight. Corpse God comments on how similar Lemmings is to Shigura Lugrid. Clarissa turns off the light to protect the Corpse God's powers and identity. Tsubaki uses a torch to lighten the room and sees just a corpse hand holding Misaki up and someone fleeing the scene. Lemmings run through the many skeleton hands that Corpse God has casted as a spell. They all teach him, but Lemmings can escape this. Lemmings then smashes that hand that holds Misaki and whispers a question into her ear, which Misaki refuses to answer. But then she grabs Lemmings' arm and says that Polka is innocent and bites his hand. Although the bandage is too thick and her paralytic saliva can't initially go through, but she tries and it works, which leads Lemmings to sway a bit. Corpse God calls forward all the souls Lemmings has killed into a giant skeleton. The skeleton stretches out an arm at Lemmings and the screen goes dark. The light illuminates the room as Tsubaki smokes, mentioning that they were useless at the scene of the crime. Clarissa mentions how awful that is. Tsubaki mentions how he has no courage to come back to the bar without a weapon anymore. Clarissa reminds him that the room is a non-smoking zone. Further in, we see Lemmings mention something to a blonde man who throws a file with the Shinoyama family. Lemmings mentions that someone called Jinba is dead. The man addresses Lemmings as Nezu. Lemmings points at Polka's body from the photo. Misaki and Takumi call and discuss Lemmings, the Corpse God who thinks about the ghosts around Lemmings. Corpse God thanks Misaki for telling Lemmings a secret, and she says that they're even who saved her life from Lemmings. Corpse God has a flashback to his teacher telling him about helping people who he wanted to help. She says that he is going to live a very long life, which will cause time to be arbitrary. The flashback ends and the Corpse God mentions how with this body he won't be able to save anyone. He calls out to Takumi and Misaki and mentions how he does not wish to live a peaceful life on the expense of the sacrifice of someone he's friends with. The scene changes and the blonde-haired man points out Polka and mentions that playtime is over. The scene changes again and Corpse God mentions that he wants to start his own business. He mentions that he requires money and that's why he needs money. He mentions how necromancy is good for other things as well, such as writing on paper, which he then demonstrates. They make a sign and Takumi disagrees. After showing the money they've made to Takumi, Takumi shows Corpse God information about the people. Corpse God is very glad to earn and wants to split it 5 ways between Polka, Takumi, Misaki, and Hasorogi. Polka rejects the money, saying that he hasn't earned it, as soon as Takumi is about to tell Corpse God about Polka's living situation. The door opens and 3 suited men and 2 kids enter, explaining to see Polka. They call him Uncle Polka. They mention how they haven't seen each other in half a month. The girl mentions that the peasants have puffed him here and that he would never run away from home. The niece is disrespectful towards Takumi and he threatens to call the police because she has entered without permission, to which both the niece and nephew are shocked. As soon as the niece is about to say something, the bodyguard tells her to stop, as Takumi might be recording this. Polka interjects that Takumi is making himself a target to save Corpse God, but his niece is on the verge of tears. Corpse God hugs both the children and says that they both have a future. Corpse God mentions that he is not Polka but an acquaintance of Polka, and he reminds them that Polka will return home tomorrow. Corpse God looks up to see a ghost which wails for the twins to be helped, and he tells the ghost that he will keep them safe. Corpse God mentions that the spirit is not evil, but just wants to take care of the twins. Takumi mentions that Polka is quite wealthy and asks if he'll go back to his house, which Corpse God agrees to. Corpse God is woeful about his peaceful life, and Takumi mentions that it might be dangerous for him to go to his house, as someone might try to kill him there. The scene changes and the twins walk up to a car and we see the blonde man again. We find out that his name is Takeru. He asks about Polka and warns the twins about an incident with Shizuka. The episode begins with the Corpse God and Misaki standing in front of a huge bungalow. They both mention how grand the bungalow is. The door that opens, revealing the 2 twin siblings welcoming the Corpse God as Polka. With them, Teruko comes out as well, mentioning how Polka was supposed to be on a self-finding journey, to which the Corpse God replied that he has found himself in Shinjuku. The scene changes to the family sitting around the table, and Misaki tells the family how without Polka she wouldn't be here, and that he has saved her multiple times. His nephew notices the shark toy in which the Corpse God has saved Polka's soul in and mentions that it seems to be moving. Then an old man enters the room and says that he is the master of the house. He is the father. The grandfather calls Polka to him and asks him if he has anything to say to him. The Corpse God first apologizes, saying that he's sorry that he left home, for the grandfather says that he should say that he's home instead. The grandfather and the Corpse God go on by themselves, and he mentions how he now runs a fortune-telling business. They talk more, and just when the Corpse God thinks he has fooled him, the man asks who the Corpse God is, as he looks and sounds like Polka, but he isn't Polka. The Corpse God continues to say that he doesn't understand, to which the old man points a knife to his throat and mentions that he is his father, and therefore knows him very well. Corpse God has a flashback and mentions this is not how he has known parents to be. Polka's father asks Corpse God where Polka is, and he replies by standing up and saying that he thinks that the twin siblings are in danger. He tells the old man that he promised to protect those children, so he's leaving, and to trust him that he'll explain everything later. The old man then lets him go. We see someone underneath the table, mentioning how he should have killed the Corpse God. Then from a distance, the father sees a dark orange light beaming. There's a scene change and the twin siblings are shown from the perspective of another. The girl is shown having lost her purse, and this person says that they will help find it. The scene changes to a dark forest, where the woman has found the purse of the girl, and looks over the bushes and sees 2 men talking. They talk about how they've waited for a long time and they're going to burn the twins. They mention that they're going to blame it on the twins, playing with fire and excuses as such. The men then talk about how they smell sweet flesh that they would like to burn, and suddenly the woman turns to ashes. We find out that this is Suzuka, who has previously been mentioned to be in a terrible incident. The twins are saved, but the girl is killed. That is the spirit that follows the twins everywhere. There is a man who tells them to follow him, and the spirit is seen begging them not to leave. Back at the police station, we see Tsubaki and Aries sitting across from someone called a phantom solitaire. Tsubaki shows him the video of the corpse walking around saving the children. The detectives in further question the phantom solitaire. They talk about the fire bug, an infamous arsonist. The scene changes again and we see the twin siblings following the man until the niece stops midway and says that there is no way out. The man then reassures her by mentioning that he has spent 2 years building it. We see the spirit trying to stop him and fight him, but can't do anything about it. As soon as he's about to set the fire, Misaki kicks him in the head and talks to the spirit, saying that Polka and her are going to save the children. The man then takes off his mask and reveals a slightly burnt face. The man knows Misaki. Misaki says that she noticed that he was scared of him before at the family gathering. They get into a physical altercation where Misaki lunges at him with a baton, but the man is able to set everything on fire, trapping the kids and Misaki in the room as fire surrounds them. The kids wonder if Suzuka is angry at them. They hold hands and they apologize to her. when they open their eyes and see Suzuka, but it's just a mirage and it is the corpse god instead. Behind him are two arms of skeleton, and he mentions that Suzuka is not angry at them and that she never stops caring about them. He then walks away with the two siblings. One of the guys who planned to set the fire mentioned how the bug must be done with setting everything up on fire now. Then a female motorcyclist pulls up to his car and punches through the window. Back at the mansion, the corpse god comes across the maid, who mentions that she's happy to see him, and he says that her soul hasn't changed, and that he was too distracted by the twins to notice her. He sees the ghosts around her and they're very upset at her. He also mentions that she went back to her male voice. Misaki kicks the woman in the face, and she is thrown towards a wall. The woman mentions that Polka was able to see through her disguise twice and reveals that the woman, in fact, remains the fire-breathing bug. He said fire to everything around them. Right then a person comes through the fire and holds down the fire-breathing bug, eventually killing him. This man is Lemmings, and he asks Misaki and the corpse god to keep a secret. The other man is held by Teruko as he mentioned how his other friend is being jailed for arson. The man denies the allegation, saying that he was threatened by it, to which Teruko replies that he must be stupid going against his family. Back at the police station, the Phantom Solitaire laughs and mentions to Detective Tsubaki that he knows that he is lying. The Phantom Solitaire is in a state of madness when he yells out that there is no chance that some common criminal can be behind the hospital skeletons. Corpse God now sits with Polka's father to explain himself, but first asks for privacy. Listening to this, the father demands the three bodyguards to leave. In another scene, Teruko thanks the Lemmings and whispers to him that the corpse god got to the twins before he did. Listening to this, Teruko is surprised. Polka's father, on the other end, points a sword at Misaki as she was one who killed Polka in the first place. Before the father can kill Misaki, Polka's spirit jumps in front and the father asks if that's Polka. With this, the father bursts out laughing as Polka seems to like being in the stuffed shark. The father slides his phone across with a robot on the screen and asks if he requires a body to possess. He should use this from his hometown. Polka seems to like the idea. Polka's father is glad that Polka is okay and that he should be safer with a corpse god in his body. He forgives Misaki, saying that she saved his grandchildren. Polka's father tries to think about who might have wanted Polka dead. Corpse God tells Takumi that he has told Polka's father. The twins thank Misaki for saving them and Misaki brushes it off, feeling happy. Corpse God mentions the guardian spirit watching them and a happy Suzuka. At the police station, Detective Tsubaki mentions that the real firebug showed up and the Phantom Solitaire asks to see the video of the fire once again. The detective tells him that he can trade it for more information, but the Phantom Solitaire mentions that he'll go and check for himself. Just then the lights go off and the Phantom Solitaire disappears. The detective discusses the disappearance of the Phantom Solitaire. The Phantom Solitaire has stolen art, made buildings vanish, several murders, but the case that made him famous was kidnapping the Prime Minister. Then, for one day, he abducted the heads of the opposition, which made the Japanese security a laughingstock. He uses magic to perform these tricks as a message to fake magicians that true magic does not have tricks behind it. He wants to make children's dreams come true by proving magic to be real. Back in the living quarters, the corpse god shows his new purchase, a radio. On the radio, they mention that the arsonist has been found and ask if everyone remembers someone named Tena Sorimura aka the Phantom Solitaire. On the news, they mention the Phantom Solitaire's disappearance. They try to find whose channel this is on, and the reporter takes off his glasses to reveal the Phantom Solitaire. At the center, this is shown on every news channel. He mentions how he'll start with his magic show where he will make everyone's lives more interesting. He mentions how he's similar to Clarissa. On the roof of a building, the Phantom Solitaire meets the firebug. He mentions how the most famous recording is by Paul Moriat. They talk to each other on the phone and the firebug mentions that he's wasting his life. He throws a ball of fire towards the Phantom Solitaire. At the living quarters, the corpse god asks about Phantom Solitaire. Here, the corpse god mentions his defeat from Shagaru. Episode 8 begins with Seo crashing at the abandoned building with the corpse god, Takumi and Misaki, and she says hello to her new housemates. She introduces herself as Polka's niece and her caretaker as Zio as he carries a heavy backpack. Seo remembers Misaki when Takumi starts to introduce her. She is upset because her sharks burned up in the house fire. The attendant explains that Seo's bedroom and shark memorabilia caught on fire. He then plays a pre-recorded video of Polka's father, Razan. Razan asks Polka to take care of Seo and her bodyguard because Polka's bedroom wall burned down as well, and that it's convenient to have two Shinoyama under the same roof. Corpse God mentions that there are more people that are watching this building and that there's something wrong with the bodyguard as well. Corpse God mentions that there are more Shinoyamas watching this building and that he decided to send his security as well. The Corpse God wakes up in the abandoned building to find Sayo sleeping behind the sofa inside a sharp sleeping bag. Takami and Misaki enter and Zayu apologizes about Sayo's behavior. Takami mentions that they need to clear up a room for Sayo and Zayu. Sayo mentions that she can sleep anywhere as long as she has her sleeping bag, and Zayu insists that he can sleep standing up. The scene changes and Zayu cooks breakfast. The Corpse God asks him why he is the attendant, and he mentions that it's because they have a similar name and that he is not just here for Sayo but also for Polka. At the manor, Tsubaki questions the maids about the arsonist. Takeru approaches the inspectors and mentions that the police should be done with their investigation, to which Tsubaki replies saying that he thinks it might be the work of the fire-breathing bug. Takeru mentions how the fire-breathing bug has worsened the reputation of their company as he has burned down several buildings of their clients. Tsubaki winces in embarrassment, which is further heightened by Takeru following up with mentioning the escape of Phantom Solitaire, which caused the stock prices to fall when he kidnapped the Prime Minister. Takeru hopes that Iwanome can guarantee no further stock tumbles. Ares remarks to Iwanome that Takeru's 2 security guards are probably killers. Tsubaki is assumed to have been led by Ares. Ares recognizes Polka from a Shinoyama family photo as Rasen's youngest son. They wonder if it had Polka or Teruka that was the issue. Teruko, on the other hand, looks over at Tsubaki, and one of Teruko's guards mentions if he wants him gone, to which Teruko says to leave Tsubaki to his own devices. Teruko also mentions that his grandfather seems to be planning something and that Tsubaki would just reveal more of Polka's secret. In a change of scene, Takumi opens a door for an empty room for Sayo, and Zayoyu, where Sayo collapses on her shark. As everyone sleeps, Zayoyu wakes up and hears the trio's conversations upstairs using a mic he has placed. Polka and Tsubaki are talking about how the new members should be dealt with. Zayoyu leaves the corridor and thinks about his conversation with Rasen about protecting Polka as well as Soya. He mentions that he knows about the Corpse God and that he is not an enemy. He vows that he will exterminate the Corpse God and the real Polka. Zayoyu mentions how Polka did not deserve to be Rasen's son and he should be his son instead. In a flashback, we see a child on a hospital bed as his father tells him that he will serve Tengu. Just then Rasen shows up and the father mentions the boy is useless, and Rasen then tells him that he will buy him from his father. The scene changes and Clarissa mentions that Shinoyamas aren't only rich but highly connected as well. She also mentions that everyone in the Shinoyama family hates Polka except his father, Rasen, who dotes on his son. They discuss that the lays that Shinoyama works with are different from the rest. Back at the abandoned building, Zayoyu listens to the trio talking about the past life of the Corpse God. He mentions the different types of dragon while Zayoyu sits outside and listens, thinking he's talking about a mango or a game. Inside the room, Misaki dances with skills and Zayoyu thinks they're all playing a game. The Corpse God catches Zayoyu outside the room. Back at the police station, Takumi mentions that Polka was caught with Misaki and that his mother is dead. They also mention when he talked to Ares, he said some strange things. Phantom Solitaire leaves the VR place to a bunch of fans. He runs into 2 policemen and runs away. Back at the abandoned building, Takumi and Ares burst in and ask Polka to read their fortune. Tsubaki mentions that he is off duty and wants to know his future, but Ares mentions the Corpse God begins with telling him his future. Corpse God informs Tsubaki that he can't find the location of escaped convicts, but he happens to have recognition. Tsubaki mentions that he would gladly ask him for future murders. Corpse God answers that he is not a clairvoyant, he just traces the past paths. Sayo mentions that she's never seen her uncle like this, but he looks the part. Zayoyu considers telling the police about the fake Polka. The Corpse God begins with describing Iwanome's current police duties. Tsubaki knows that Takumi can look him up and mention it to the Corpse God through an earpiece he might be hiding behind his headband. Tsubaki is impressed when the Corpse God mentions the many suitors his family wants him to consider marrying. The Corpse God then mentions Tsubaki's past, that there is a wound that weighs him down and that he hasn't moved on from it. Tsubaki finds this fascinating and asks how he can heal and challenges the Corpse God's fortune-telling skills. Just then the pen moves and the Corpse God draws a symbol that is too well known to Tsubaki. Zayu realizes the sound he heard. Just then, Tsubaki grabs the Corpse God by the collar and asks how the Corpse God knew about this symbol. Just then we go to a flashback, where Tsubaki is tossed a cigarette and tucked in the pack is a symbol that has been drawn. Just then the guy burns the paper and mentions that this symbol must be followed, but it's also a one-way ticket to death, and that Tsubaki should never show this symbol to anyone. Tsubaki gets angry and asks how the corpse god knew this. Just then he calms down and gives the corpse god some money, and once he's leaving, the corpse god mentions that it was not Polka who told him his future but the corpse god, which Tsubaki shrugs off. Just then, Zayu mentions how he should do some digging and leaves to get dinner for the people present. Tsubaki and Ares eat at a restaurant where Ares asks what happened to Tsubaki back at the abandoned building. Tsubaki apologizes, saying that he should not have gotten so heated. In a change of scenery, we see a mobster inputting a safes combination inside of a burning building, saying how he never thought this building would go up in flames similar to the Shinoyama estate. Just then, the fire-breathing bug is seen standing before the mobster. The place burns up with the mobster while the Phantom Solitaire dances in to look at the scroll the mobster was trying to steal. The Phantom asks if this is the bug the fire-breathing bug was talking about. He decides that this bug will be the theme of his performance. Back at the abandoned building, Takumi asks why the detective got so aggressive, to which the corpse god replies that there were no spirits around him and that he did not make up a random symbol. At the bar, Ares and Zayu listen when Tsubaki talks to Clarissa. He tells Clarissa to stop playing dumb because she is the only person who could spend years erasing traces for another person. He mentions how he knows that Clarissa is connected to Polka and that there is a mutual friend who gave the information to Clarissa, who presumably passed it to Polka. When Clarissa asks who Tsubaki is talking about, he frustratedly mentions a rogue inspector in arms, Hasorogi. Corpse God explains that he doesn't know what Hasorogi wrote because Hasorogi told him he'd handle it. Back at the bar, Clarissa mentions that Tsubaki looks a little happy and angry, and Tsubaki mentions that he is angry because of Polka and asks why she is recruiting children. Clarissa mentions that she's just letting Polka stay to get closer to a member of the influential Shinoyama family. Satisfied with the answer, Tsubaki mentions that he is convinced that Hasorogi is alive, and to tell Hasorogi that Comp 3 will get rid of corruption so he can join again. Takami is shocked when he learns that Hasorogi is an Aya inspector who investigates corruption in the police. Misaki asks if Hasorogi used to be Ares and Tsubaki's boss, and Hasorogi says they knew each other. Corpse God mentions that he made a pact with Hasorogi that he will resolve some of Hasorogi's regrets in exchange for Hasorogi's help. Hasorogi tells the corpse god that he will have to show face to Clarissa. The Phantom, on the other hand, walks through the jail to buy information from the grocer, who is the incarcerated head of a mercantile business. The Phantom offers him the symbol, and the grocer asks for adequate information about the payment. The Phantom offers 2 pieces of information that does not satisfy the grocer, yet he still offers the Phantom some information about the symbol by mentioning that it is similar to an insignia that was used by the old Central Eastern European knight order, and the diagonal line is actually a sword. In the morning, the Phantom Solitaire has his performance. Takumi, Polka, Misaki, and Seo wake up with anticipation. Seo draws attention to the window. Around the city, Clarissa, Ares, Tsubaki, Lemmings, and most of the Shinoyama clan watch an airship with a single symbol. The corpse god mentions that he thought he reincarnated to a completely different word. Misaki asks him if he recognized the symbol, and the corpser god says it's the emblem of the fallen empire from his old world. Back at the Imperial Palace, a woman tells corpse god about the symbol. Just then the young emperor declares that he was the one who changed the emblem when he acquired the throne. The corpse god looks at the symbol now placed upon airplanes. In a group online, people discuss the Phantom Solitaire unveiling the symbol. At the police station, Ares and Tsubaki wonder what is going on, and Ares asks if that's the symbol that Tsubaki was mentioning. And he mentions that there is no point hiding it anymore and shows Ars the message the pencil wrought, which basically mentioned not trusting anyone. Tsubaki mentions that if the Phantom Solitaire is behind the airship stunt, he can be involved with Hasorogi, or the people he was after. On the radio on the airship, a news broadcaster relays the statements from the police. Phantom Solitaire muses that the internet probably knows more than the news, and he dwells on the amount of money he spent. The scene changes and the Phantom asks the grocer for the price of the information, and the grocer asks for 3 trillion yen. The Phantom Solitaire is baffling as the grocer charges 30 million yen just for 3 minutes of talking. The grocer mentions that he sets a price depending how badly someone wants the circumstances. The symbol says grocer can change his destiny. The Phantom reclines on a chair reading a manga when a shot rings out and his bloody arm falls limp. On a broadcast, Phantom Solitaire shows the footage of his mannequin getting shot and explains that just 58 minutes after the airship was airborne, the dummy was shot. He offers 300 million yen to anyone who can give him substantial information about the secret society who might be involved with that symbol. At the abandoned building, Takumi, the corpse god, watches the live stream and wonder what they should do. Seo asks for answers herself as well. The corpse god relays his entire life story, how he was reincarnated into Polka. The corpse god mentions that Polka's soul is safe and Takumi worries that Soya won't believe him. But to their surprise, Seo quickly believes them and says that she won't mention it to Zayu. Takumi and the corpse god discuss wiping away Seo's memory, and the corpse god admits that this would affect someone's physical brain. In the common area, Misaki mentions that she tried to investigate and Seo had put the hit on Polka. The corpse god mentions that he needs to meet whoever is using the emblem as they are defiling the precious memory. Takumi mentions that the corpse god should see who it is that has brought this symbol from his world, to which the corpse god mentions that it took him years to perfect his resurrection power. Misaki asks if he knows any more ghosts they can talk to. The corpse god says yes, saying that he set more of them free before the Order's last subjugation unit arrived, but some remained with him. He feels anxious facing them because he was considered a threat to the world. Seo mentions that he should apologize to them but call them still, and they must feel something for him if they made that pact. The corpse god feels a lot of gratitude for Seo. Hasaragi mentions that the police department is more sinister than they know. Back at the police department, Tsubaki is met with the police superintendent general, Jirotaru, who excuses his outlook but asks if he's ready to be part of a cog in the machine. Back at the abandoned building, Takumi mentions that Tsubaki was looking for Hasaragi on the office computer, and Hasaragi mentions how that could have been what got him in trouble. The episode begins with 4 people filling out a questionnaire. One person is a medical practitioner who visited the corpse god before. The others ask him about the authenticity of the corpse god. Corpse god asks Takumi if he has found anything about the emblem, and Takumi mentions that he suspects that the case is serious. He mentions that while investigating the emblem, Hasaragi went missing. Hasaragi clarifies that he was taken and probably killed in this building by hired assassins. Takumi wonders if the culprit is a police officer. Hasaragi is reluctant to name the culprit without evidence, as it could endanger corpse god and the others. Zayu is eavesdropping and is curious about the fight against police corruption. Hasaragi mentions that he passed a message to Tsubaki, but he regrets it and wants to entrust it to him as they pursued the case together. In the police station, Tsubaki talks about the solitaire phantom, saying that he is elusive. He mentions that if they all follow the emblem that Solitaire is after, they will likely cross paths. A pair of detectives mention the Shinjukus and what they're doing, and that Ares and Tozawa, who are part of Comps 3, are there as well. They question Tsubaki's authority. Back at the abandoned building, the corpse god reads the fortune of a man called Shouta Yamanura. Yet Phantom Solitaire is impersonating Shouta Yamanura. The Phantom assumes that Takumi is feeding the corpse god this information through, although that in itself makes the Solitaire very impressed. The corpse god asks if there are any specific questions he would want to ask. The Solitaire asks about the symbol. The corpse god says that he cannot say much about it, but the symbol is strange. Hasaragi draws the symbol, and the Solitaire is impressed by the trick. Corpse god mentions that the actual symbol does not have the horizontal line that the airship symbol had. Solitaire is happy that corpse god knows this correctly, as he had added the line to distinguish the liars from the truth tellers. He wonders that this must be a test to just the secret society. Corpse god thinks to himself about how careless this was, but he asks the Phantom if he knows a girl with pigtails who uses a wheelchair. The Phantom Solitaire answers that that must be his guardian spirit. Once out of the room, the Phantom mentions how he thought the corpse god was a fake, but he is shocked that he knows about the girl. He wonders just how much he can see. Corpse god mentions how strange it is that 2 people asked him the same question. Just then, a fire-breathing bug is seen leaving the building as well. After the meeting, Ares hands Tsubaki a black coffee can and mentions that there are 100 investigators and that they keep checking surveillance cameras. Tsubaki mentions that the symbol is wrong, and Ares mentions how they shouldn't mention that here, as the enemy could anywhere. Tsubaki mentions that the Phantom Solitaire is his responsibility, yet having more than one goal is difficult. They feud with the 2 officers who were previously talking. Tsubaki mentions that whoever holds a grudge is probably a corrupt cop, and the officer tries to punch Tsubaki, but Eros catches his arm and slowly crushes it. Just then, a man in a white suit walks in. Tozawa trips the aggressive officer with his cane. Tozawa notices that the arm has been dislocated and pops it back in. The senior commissioner asks what's going on, and Tozawa reassures him that nothing is wrong. The senior commissioner asks Tsubaki not to provoke the men, as they are already on edge due to the Phantom accusing the police. Tsubaki thanks him for covering for him. As he walks out, the Comp 3 members are waiting, and he tells them that there are more troublemakers that could be involved, and establishes that the point of Comp 3 is to protect the town from the troublemakers. Zayu hears footsteps on the roof, where the Phantom exclaims that is going to commit another crime. He calls upon the hidden Zayu and refers to him as Polka, to which he answers saying not to consider him similar to Polka. Meanwhile, the corpse god and Polka sleep. Polka awakens to see the fire-breathing bug's signature. Meanwhile, the corpse god dreams about the day in the imperial capital. In a dream, corpse god mourns the deaths of his found family and seeks forgiveness for his failure to protect them or their killers. He feels like an enemy of the empire and tries to escape, but the emperor approaches him affectionately. Corpse god wakes up when he feels Polka's flippers on his face. He reads the messages left behind. Corpse god runs his hand through the words, noticing that they're still warm. In the stairwell, the fire-breathing bug calls Polka and asks if he's also a Beastard child of Sabaramand. Corpse god is shocked and asks how the caller knows that name. On the roof, the phantom laughs about how inconsiderate they are. Zayu wonders who they are. The phantom is left to flounder when Zayu seems not bothered. Zayu attacks the phantom and the phantom dodges. Zayu extended his hands into large claws and attacked the phantom solitaire. From a distance, a man watches and reports it back to Teruko. Teruko mentions that it is not what he was expecting. He mentions that he will react now as well. Lemmings listens to this. The last episode begins with the fire-breathing big mentions that they're getting children like him involved as well. The corpse god asks what he meant by the bastard child of Sabaramand and if the Sabaraman is in this world and if the caller has ties to the Bayandi Empire. The fire-breathing bug mentions that he doesn't know these words and wonders if Polka is playing dumb, but decides he's not. The bug asks if Polka is different. He asks Polka what he is. He wonders if they are watching him. On the roof, Zayu and the Phantom Solitaire fight each other. Phantom mentions how Zayu gives him quite a fright. Zayu mentions that the Phantom is quite slow and wonders what brings him here. He mentions if he's looking for someone called Hasorogi. The Phantom is interested and mentions how he will repay Hasorogi. Just then, Lemmings land on the roof and Zayu steps back. Zayu mentions that Lemmings is a monsters. Just then he asks if he's working with the Phantom. The Phantom tries to play it off, but it's obvious he himself does not know what to do. Lemmings turns to Phantom and just then, Zayu attacks him. The scene changes and Teruko mentions how he hasn't told any of his family about his team. He mentions that they must have seen Lemmings during the recent fire. Teruko wanted Lemmings not to touch Zayu and that he would never go against his order no matter what happens to him. Lemmings pops the knives out of his back. Zayu is angered and attacks him again, trapping him and electrocuting him. Lemming walks towards the Phantom to attack. Zayu is very confused as he thought he was on the Phantom's side. Just then, a girl with the fire-breathing raincoat is stopped by Yatsu, and Tozawa stops the girl from going and saying that it is 3 AM, and therefore they need to investigate why a miner is wearing a raincoat when the weather is good. The fire-breathing bug ends the call with the corpse god. Corpse god wonders what's going on and how the details from his world are bleeding through into this world, and that he became so corrupted that he can never go back. He puts on his shirt and mentions that the only person he senses above is Lemmings. He mentions that the caller must be close by. He calls about spirits and secures the building. Corpse god's spell consumes the building, covering the windows in bloody handprints. Yatsu outside mentions that this girl is a bit strange and that he cannot let his guard down just because she's a girl. She mentions that she was looking for her dog with her father and that Dig went inside the abandoned building. She calls to a man with an umbrella and mentions to him that these are police officers. The father explains the same story. The police officer asks about the raincoat and the girl answers that it is so she doesn't get dirty. The corpse god mentions that there are no living dogs around and notices Lemming's presence on the roof, mentioning that there are 2 souls who asked about the emblem and that it isn't a coincidence that happened. He explains his temple to the whole area. The officers notice the drop in temperature. Corpse god walks up to the roof, mentioning that he would not like to face Lemmings straight away and will use his invisible hand to support Zayu. The Phantom launches a card at Lemmings which doesn't touch him. Lemmings goes to attack the Phantom and his shirt is torn off. Lemmings feels something physically stops him from attacking. The corpse god is the one controlling them. He takes this a step further. On the roof, the Phantom launches a bunch of balloons and escapes. The 2 police officers talk about calling Tsubaki and mention the Phantom's trick. Just then, the corpse god weaves his necromancy spell. The corpse god mentions that sympathizing with the dead he can share senses. As the Phantom flies away, he forgives the fire-breathing bug for using him as a ruse. The corpse god weaves a flock of invisible hands that leaps for Lemmings, and the corpse god mentions that he lacks the power to control Lemmings and decides to focus on the Phantom. Before the Phantom flies away, he makes a pact saying that he will uncover the corpse god's truth. Just then Lemmings tries to catch the phantom, but he flies away, but he is able to catch the girl with the raincoat. Meanwhile, the media goes crazy after this as the comments about necromancy increase. Just then, there is a message that mentions Hasaragi and how his heirs must have gathered where he was killed. Tsubaki sits at home when he gets the phone call and asks to secure the scene. Clarissa mentions how Shinjuku has been lively.